coming at you for Dynasty Owner with the 2020 Dynasty Owner Awards. I know what you're saying. You're saying to yourself, do I really need another awards video? Well, the answer is yes, you do. Because we're going to do this a little bit different than what Jay did. We're going to offer up some awards. We got some awards to hand out. These are our trophies here. And we've got the Dynasty Owner Player of the Year. We've got the Value Player of the Year. We've got the Rookie of the Year, the Free Agent of the Year. And then we're going to go position by position and give you the Player of the Year at each position and a Value Player of the Year at each position. So why are we doing this? Why do we look at 2020 when we're supposed to be focusing on 2021 and startup drafts? And the reason why is we need to learn from the hit Dynasty Owner history, as brief as it is. That's how you can help set up your 2021 startup draft. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to name the Dynasty Owner of the Year. And there is no surprise that our Dynasty Owner of the Year is Victor. Victor and his team, Barbie Kilgore. They were the Chase for the Ring. They were your Chase for the Ring champion. Congratulations to Victor. Next, we are going to name our Dynasty Owner Player of the Year. And no surprise that the Dynasty Owner Player of the Year for 2020 is Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, he had 421.3 Dynasty Owner fantasy points for the season, and he was your Dynasty Owner Player of the Year. He cost you only a little over $4.1 million this year, which will go up to $45 million next year. But the way to, you've got to have the top scoring players to win your championship and win your rings, to win the ring. So this year it was Patrick Mahomes. Next, we have our Dynasty Owner Value Player of the Year. And the Value Player of the Year is an undrafted rookie free agent from the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's James Robinson. Robinson came out of really nowhere. Most people thought Leonard Fournette was going to be the back in Jacksonville, and then he got released, and people scrambled, didn't know who to pick up. Some people did, and if you had a late draft, you may have picked up Robinson at the end of the draft if you were drafting later in the year. But for those of you who didn't, he was available on the free agent auction. And what did he do? He just ended up being basically a 3-down back. He was on the field for about 72% of the Jacksonville offensive snaps, and he had 232.2 Dynasty Owner fantasy points for the year. He averaged 19.4 points per game, and he only had one game with less than 10 points and 5 games with over 20 points. So congratulations to James Robinson on being the Dynasty Owner Value Player of the Year. We did have a runner-up. It was very close. An honorable mention goes to Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones of Green Bay. He had 195.3 Dynasty Owner fantasy points, and his salary was only $650,000 a year compared to $763,000 a year for Robinson. That made Robinson's cost per point at $3,279, whereas Robinson's value was just a tick higher at $3,331. So if Aaron Jones hadn't missed hadn't missed a couple of games with injury, he may have ended up being the Value Player of the Year. But congratulations on a great season, and you'll probably get a big contract and not be eligible for this award next year, whereas Robinson might be back-to-back Value Player of the Year. We'll see. Next, we have our Rookie of the Year. And our Rookie of the Year is Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. He was the 6th pick in the NFL draft, and out of the 3 rookies picked in Dynasty Owner, he was the third one. He was the third one chosen on average with an ADP of 98.8 compared to Joe Burrow being picked an ADP of 26.1 and Tua Tagovailoa at 64. Apologies to Tua for mispronouncing his last name. However, when the season started, Herbert was on the bench. He didn't play his first game till week 2. And when he did play, boy, did he play. he ended up outpacing all of them by averaging by starting with 27.3 points per game and outproducing both of them with an average with outproducing both Burrow and Tua this season. So congratulations to Justin Herbert on being the rookie of our Dynasty owner rookie of the year. Next, we have the free agent of the year, and the free agent of the year, it goes to a guy who was not on the radar of a lot of Dynasty owners. In fact, to win your free agent of the year award, you had to have been undrafted in Dynasty owner. And that was the case for Carolina running back Mike Davis. Mike Davis was undrafted in the Dynasty owner drafts. Most people, obviously, with Christian McCaffrey ahead of you, Christian McCaffrey was arguably the number 1 or the number 2 pick in Dynasty owner for the most part. And he was expected to play a lot. I mean, last year in 2019, he played 93% of Carolina's offensive snaps. And if you had a backup, some people handcuffed him with Reggie Bonifant, because Reggie Bonifant was the backup last year, and he had only a salary of $585,000, whereas Davis's salary was $3 million. So Davis went from not being on a lot of people's radars to scoring 15.5 Dynasty owner fantasy points in week 2 after McCaffrey went out with injury. He put up 3 20-point games after that, and really cemented himself as the top running back in Carolina. For the season, he was your number 12 running back. On a per game basis, he averaged 14.8 points a game, and he was ranked 15th. So a lot of production for basically somebody who you got to pick off the waiver wire probably after week 2, after his performance in week 2. So congratulations to Mike Davis on being our free agent of the year. Next, we're going to go to position players because, while we have overall winners, there's different guys at different positions performed very well. And the first one, obviously, our quarterback of the year is Patrick Mahomes. I mean, this is not a surprise. He averaged 35.3 Dynasty owner fantasy points per game, ahead of Dak Prescott, who had 35. However, as we all know, Prescott got injured in week 5 and didn't complete the season. So second place, Mahomes was much better than any other quarterback and Dynasty owner. I mean, Aaron Rodgers had a great season, but he was number 2, and he averaged a little over 3 points less per game than Mahomes. So, and then we have the value quarterback of the year. Last year, speaking of Dak Prescott, this was Dak Prescott because he only had a salary of $525,000. Well, this year we have no winner. Sorry, nobody gets the prize. This will stay here. Because why? Because Gardner Minshew, we have some low salary quarterbacks in Dynasty. Gardner Minshew is $677,000 a year. However, he didn't play after week 7, so can't really give an award to a guy who played half a season. The next lowest paid starting quarterback was Cam Newton at $1.75 million, along with Drew Lock, who's just a shade higher. But neither one of them played well enough to really be worth owning, except for their low salary. I mean, Newton, in comparison to Patrick Mahomes, who had 423.1 Dynasty owner fantasy points, Newton had almost half as many, 218.5. So, I mean, if not for his low salary of $1.75 million, I don't think he really would have been owned in too many Dynasty owner leagues. Next, we have our running back of the year. And this was a close race for running back of the year, but the winner ultimately was Dalvin Cook of the Minnesota Vikings. If you recall, way back in June, there was some talk of Dalvin Cook being a holdout. He wasn't going to report to training camp, which was worrisome, especially because there are going to be no preseason games. However, it was all a bluff. He reported, and he ended up scoring 287.4 Dynasty owner fantasy points per game, missing one game, by the way. So he was averaging 26.1 points per game. On all that for just a little under $1.6 million per year. That's going to increase for 2021 to a little over 11 million, to a little over 12.6 million. So that increase is going to be about $11 million, which coincidentally is pretty much almost exactly how much the Dynasty owner salary cap is going up this year. So if you have Dalvin Cook on your roster, you can keep him. You just are using all your added increase in salary cap for this year. But so Dalvin Cook was the running back of the year. He had an average cost per points of $5,527, which is important because the guy who came in second place and wins the value, wins the honorable mention for this was Alvin Kamara. He had almost as many Dynasty owner fantasy points as Dalvin Cook. He had 280.9. However, Kamara played in one extra regular season game, so therefore his average points per game was 23.4. For a guy who is drafted pretty much in the middle to late part of your first round with an ADP of 7.7, compared to Cook, who had a slightly higher ADP of 12.5. That's average draft position. Kamara's salary for this past year was just under $1 million at $964,000, but he goes up next year to $15 million a year. So sorry, Alvin, you'll probably be in the running for running back of the year, but you won't be running for the value running back of the year, which went to, no surprise, James Robinson. This was a close race. How close, you say? Well, I mean, we already talked about Aaron Jones having just over that cost per point of just over $3,300, whereas Robinson's was $3,279 per point. But Kamara, with a slightly higher salary of almost $1 million, with the more points that he scored, his cost per point was just over $3,400 per point, which means that it was extremely close. There was a lot of running backs, and that's what you find at the running back position is you find a lot of value. Next, we're going to go to a place where you really didn't find too much value, and that's what your wide receivers. The wide receivers who scored the most points in Dynasty owner this year, the one who had the second most points but wins our wide receiver of the year award is Davante Adams of the Green Bay Packers. As you know, he missed 2 games near the beginning of the season, but he had the highest average Dynasty owner fantasy points per game average in 26.2. compared to Tyreek Hill, who had the most Dynasty owner fantasy points at wide receiver, but had an average of just 23.3 points per game. And Adams carries a slightly lower salary, which is great for those of us in Dynasty owner because he's only $14.5 million. I say only in comparison to Tyreek Hill, who is $18 million. The thing that you got from Tyreek Hill that you didn't get from Davante Adams was you got production in every regular season game that he played other than the bye. So in 12 regular season weeks, the Dynasty owner regular season is 13 weeks. In 12 weeks minus the bye, he played in all 12 games. And he set a record. Tyreek Hill set the Dynasty owner record for the most points in a single game with 63.9 in week 12. But unfortunately, that wasn't enough to win. He gets an honorable mention. He doesn't get the trophy here. He gets an honorable mention to Davante Adams. And at value wide receiver of the year, we see a name who was kind of surprising to me in that usually your value players of the year are guys with under $1 million salaries. You've got a few of them at wide receiver, but none of them had the type of production that DK Metcalf had. And so DK Metcalf is your value wide receiver of the year. He scored you 231.9 Dynasty owner fantasy points to rank third in the league, to rank third in Dynasty owner, and he did that for just under $1.15 million a year. So his cost per point was $4,944, which is a slight bit higher than the 3 running backs we talked about earlier, James Robinson, Alvin Kamara, and Aaron Jones. But DK Metcalf turned out to be the best value of all the wide receivers in Dynasty owner this year, as he, for that $1.15 million, you got a lot of production. Next, we're going to talk about our tight end of the year. And for the second consecutive year, our tight end of the year is Travis Kelce. This is not a surprise. He's the only repeat winner of the Position Player of the Year award, as he had 241.6 Dynasty owner fantasy points. He had 45.5 more points than his nearest competitor, Darren Waller, and he was the only tight end to average over 20 points per game at 20.1. That's more than George Kittle, who averaged 16.4 points per game, but only played in 6 games, and more than Darren Waller averaged 16.3 points per game. Now I know Kelsey's salary is high; it's almost $9.4 million, and it's getting higher, going to $14.3 million. But you've got to think about it in that he's probably the favorite to win this award for the 3rd consecutive year. So if there's a spot where you might want to pay up for a player to get the most production out of that player, it's Travis Kelce, because effectively you're getting one of the best receivers in the game for upper end tight end money, but still less than Devontae Adams next year, less than Tyreek Hill, less than a lot of your other wide receivers. So congratulations to Travis Kelce on repeating as the tight end of the year. And the value tight end of the year was another guy who was undrafted in Dynasty owner, Robert Tonyan of the Green Bay Packers. Tonyan was the 4th highest scorer in Dynasty owner this season with 138.7 points. Now, that's great. I mean, that's an average of 11.6 points a game, but contrast that to Kelce, who scored you over 20 points a game. The good side about Tonyan is that because he's the value tight end of the year, he only cost you $750,000. And finally, last but not least, everybody's favorite position, kicker. And the kickers of the year, we have the kicker of the year and the value kicker of the year. And really, there were only 2 guys who we could even consider for this award. One was Younghoe Koo of the Atlanta Falcons, and the other was Jason Sanders of the Miami Dolphins. Koo wins the Kicker of the Year award, even though he had slightly fewer Dynasty owner fantasy points. He had 117 versus 123 for Sanders. However, Koo did miss a game with an injury, so his average was 10.6 points per game versus 10.3 points per game for Sanders. Now, both of those guys were the only kickers in Dynasty owner to average more than 10 points per game. And the good part for both of them is that they had low salaries. Koo's salary was $660,000 for this season, where Sanders' salary was $637,800 for the entire season. So both of them were cost you a little over $5,000 per point. So congratulations to all of our winners, all the honorable mentions. If you get in touch with me, I will send you one of your trophy. So please get in touch with me to receive your trophy. And to recap, why are we looking back at the 2020 season? I mean, right now it's the 2021 season. People are starting to join Dynasty owner. People are starting to think about their drafts. Maybe you're a current Dynasty owner, you're going to get a new team, and you're going to draft again this year. So what does going back and looking at 2020 tell us about 2021? Well, it tells us a couple of things. The first thing it tells us is that quarterbacks are the high scorers in Dynasty owner. And we'll get into this more in future videos, but it's because of the scoring system. So take a look at the scoring system and notice that it's tilted towards quarterbacks in Dynasty owner. So unlike other fantasy leagues, you're going to get more points from your quarterback, which means getting a quarterback who can get you those points is a premium. The next thing you'll notice, the trend, and we talked about this a little bit, was that running backs is where you really get your value. I mean, we had 3 running backs who provided some of the best value in James Robinson, Aaron Jones, and Alvin Kamara this year. So the question is going to be, who are those guys who are going to provide that value next year? You need to find those guys. The running back is where to find the value. And then, in contrast, wide receiver is where you probably need to pay up. Because the top performers there are the guys making $14.5 million in Devontae Adams and $18 million in Tyreek Hill. Those were your top 2 performers. And even if you include tight end, you've got Travis Kelce, who was making almost $9.4 million this year, and it's going up to $14.3 million per year. But he was the clear number one tight end, and probably the guy that dynasty owners wanted to have. The one dynasty owner who had Travis Kelce was probably, the other 11 were probably very jealous because he knew that dynasty owner knew who they were going to start at tight end every single week. There was no question. And finally, I want to say thank you to everybody for reading these articles, watching this video. Please, smash the like button for us to help with help Dynasty Owner out, and follow the other writers and videos. We've got the team here coming at you 4 days a week with new Dynasty Owner content. We've got articles and videos. On Monday, we've got Nate Christian at Nate NFL, who's going to break down rookies in his prospect preview. Check out his one with Jamar Chase this week. On Tuesdays, we're all off. On Wednesdays, we've got Matt the Jerk, who's going to take a deep dive into contracts on every Wednesday with his article and video. And then on Thursdays, you've got Jay Pounds at Jay Pounds NFL, who's going to tailor his articles and videos to those of you who are current dynasty owners who might not have done so well last year and might be in a rebuild this year. He's going to talk to you and show you how to rebuild your team so that you can be in the chase for the ring competition. And then I'll be here on Fridays with my articles and videos, sort of focusing on startup drafts. So those of you who are new to Dynasty Owner, those of you who played last year and really want a second team, you're going to have to draft that team totally new this year. And so I'll be there to help you. I'll be there to help you figure out how to win your Dynasty Owner draft and hopefully win your Dynasty Owner championship. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Have a great day. Appreciate you watching the video and reading the articles, and happy to just be part of Dynasty Owner. It's the best Dynasty fantasy football platform, and probably the best fantasy football platform out there. And I'm blessed and honored to be able to write these articles, come to you with these videos, and hopefully bring you some good information. So thanks a lot. Have a great day.